We're back. It's time for another edition of Carolina Insider Live. Jones and Adam here with you. Thanks so much for joining us here on a Thursday afternoon. The show, of course, brought to you by our friends at Wells Fargo. When our communities need us, Wells Fargo is there to help. Adam, no sense in messing around. We have a really good and an important interview coming up today. Had a chance to speak yesterday, so we've already conducted this interview. This was with Garrison Brooks and with Howard Lee. I think if you're watching us now, you probably know who Garrison Brooks is, of course, already. And Howard Lee may not be as familiar a name to everybody watching today, but Mr. Lee is somebody who has had an extraordinary impact on the state of North Carolina for decades, really.
Mr. Lee is somebody who you might know in a variety of roles. You might know his impact with Carolina basketball because he was a longtime friend of Dean Smith. He was utilized by the basketball program as a liaison to the Chapel Hill community at large with players and recruits when they came in and wanted to learn a little more about Carolina. He was, as he told us on the Carolina Insider audio podcast, the recruiting host for Charles Scott when he came on his recruiting visit to Chapel Hill. He also has been intimately involved in politics in Chapel Hill, the state of North Carolina. He has lived an important life, and we felt lucky to be able to connect him with Garrison Brooks and be able to listen to those two folks talk to each other.
Of course, a lot going on socially right now in our country. That includes here in Chapel Hill. And these are two gentlemen who really can speak more eloquently and in a first-person way, much more than Adam and I can, about what's been going on. So we want to take you to that interview. We'll come back later on. We have our BMW social drive as well. Look, Adam's already doing his driving here early. So let's get to our conversation with Garrison Brooks and Howard Lee. Again, this is an interview we conducted yesterday with those two gentlemen. We'll have that come back, and there'll be a lot more to do on Carolina Insider Live.
I think one of the things we all enjoy about Carolina basketball is that for the last 60 or so years, it's been about more than just Carolina basketball. And that's what we wanted to talk about today, and that's why we've invited Garrison Brooks and Howard Lee to be here with us. You probably know both these gentlemen. Garrison Brooks, going to be a senior, hard to believe, Garrison, on this coming year's Carolina basketball team. Howard Lee, you may have heard him on the Carolina Insider podcast back this winter. Former mayor of Chapel Hill. He's been involved in every aspect of really life in North Carolina over the past couple decades. So thank you to both of you for joining us. And Mr. Lee, I wanted to start with you. How have you experienced this last week or so? What have you seen that feels familiar and unfamiliar to you?
Well, certainly a lot of what's going on feels very familiar. Unfortunately, a part of it is like reliving a bad movie because many of the experiences that have been highlighted, I have lived through growing up in the South near the Atlanta area. And as a college student, when I looked at how Floyd was being treated by the police, it brought back memories of when I had a gun pointed to my head and a threat to blow it off if I said one more word. So that was bad. But also, I've seen this reaction by people through the years on many occasions, but this feels a little different than what the previous ones felt to me. I think that there is a combination of things that is creating a level of desperation and a commitment on the part of people to try and bring these problems to a level of where they can no longer be ignored. Because unfortunately, through the years, many leaders have ignored, made promises, and then did not carry out those promises, and that's leaving people very frustrated.
Garrison, I'd be interested in kind of the same question that Adam asked Mr. Lee, just your experience over the last week or week and a half, the feelings and emotions that you've had, and then after hearing what Mr. Lee said, and if you have any questions for him.
So pretty much my experience this past week has been pretty rough. I mean, I've been staying up a lot, just thinking like, why is this happening to Black people, and like, what can we do to really change this? I mean, unfortunately, like, the riots and the looting happens, but I think the protest is a good way to get our voices heard and really just express ourselves in the manner that everybody can understand that we're frustrated with what's happening and something should change. And Mr. Lee, I was wondering if you could give us, this generation, any type of advice of what we should do or what we could do to really push for change and really make change happen, what would it be?
Well, I would start with getting involved in local community activities, but more importantly and more specifically, getting registered and then voting. Because to me, that is the first tool we have to bring about change, but voting for the right people, not just having a knee-jerk reaction to vote for whoever's on the ballot. So that's one. But I go back to the fact that this is not new for UNC students and for young people. There are many young people who've been involved for quite a long time, but certainly not enough. When I ran for lieutenant governor in 1976, college students were certainly there, but more importantly, college students were the ones who helped me get elected mayor in 1969. So I would like to see more involvement of young people, because through the last few years, I have seen a kind of a diminishment of college students as well as high school students being involved in community activities. So register, vote, and then try to find ways to engage in the community. I'm extremely pleased with what has happened at UNC, and because UNC has always been a little on the cutting edge of engaging beyond just athletics. And through Coach Smith and then Coach Williams, you guys have really done more than just play basketball. You have absolutely contributed to the community.
Garrison, you're obviously a Carolina basketball player, and when we see you on the court in the Smith Center, we see the reception you get there, and we think that must be pretty great, quite honestly, that everybody's cheering you on and loves you so much. How is your experience different when we're not seeing you, when you're not on the court in the Smith Center and you're just going about your daily life the other 335 days of the year that maybe we don't see?
Yeah. So truthfully, it normally goes well. I'm not gonna lie. Like, it's typically around the community in Chapel Hill, Carborough area, we're really appreciated for the hard work we put in on the basketball court and how we represent the university. But I think, like, the past couple of days, I mean, I feel like our group, our basketball team, and some of our student athletes haven't been appreciated as much for really just telling how they feel and telling what they think is best for us, and also just expressing like their discomfort and their vulnerability of being African American in America. And I think that's one of the things that fans have a tough time understanding sometimes, that we have emotions and we're people also, and we can express how we feel even outside of the court. I think that's something that we as people should understand. That everyone has an opinion and everyone has the right to state their own opinion about things.
Mr. Lee, you mentioned that you've lived through some of these similar circumstances before. How was some progress made in the civil rights era in the 60s? Obviously, we still have a long way to go, but there was some progress made then. How was progress made then that we can learn from and hopefully try to replicate that now?
There's no question that tremendous progress has been made as a result of the activities of the civil rights era and, of course, subsequent years. And we can point to many significant achievements. I think the concern is that people don't tend to sustain the level of commitment that results in systemic change. We have not seen the continuous systemic change that needs to occur. For example, we know that we've seen a switch between the Democratic and Republican Party when it comes to making laws. And we make a lot of lip service about change, But when you look at the whole economic picture, that economic picture has still not been opened in a way that it allows people who are minorities to have full access to the resources. When we look at the fact that our communities are still segregated, when we have people living in the Black community and living across town in a more affluent community, it leaves people out a great deal. So I think what we tend to do is to celebrate small achievements without recognizing those achievements are not resulting in ongoing permanent change that needs to occur. And I make one final point. I know that there are people who said to me through the years, you can't legislate attitudes. And that's where the problem is. It's an attitude people tend to express. They'll express positive attitude when things are happening that they feel good about, but then they don't carry that through back in their own communities to try to bring about change there. They'll ignore what's going on in their own communities. In the schools, they'll ignore it in the community itself. They won't stand up a lot of times and fight for the extension of water and sewer into the Black community that sometimes is left out of the paved streets. And I can go on and on because that is still a major problem if you look around and see what's happening.
Mr. Lee, when you were on with us before, you told us if you treat people with respect, most often they'll return that respect. For both of you, I just wonder, why does it seem so hard in 2020 to just get that respect and just listen for just a minute? How can we do that better?
I think certainly the important thing is to have people talk directly with each other. You know, doing this isolation and quarantine process because of the virus, that is the one thing that I have missed interacting with my friends. People tend to want to talk about pleasant things, but not certainly about the unpleasant aspects of it. And I think we're going to have to talk, but we've got to go beyond talking. We have to act in a way that it forces people to behave in a certain way. And I don't care whether people like me or not. It's whether or not they respect me, and that's I engender that by first of all respecting people. And I think I've shared with you all that there are a number of people with whom I disagreed, but still had a very positive relationship with. And I think if I do that, then that makes me feel good, but I can't take responsibilities for others who refuse to do it.
Garrison, what about you? Who have you learned from and listened to during your getting close to 4 years at Carolina here? What are some things you've learned about that maybe you didn't necessarily agree with, but you at least appreciated the opportunity to learn about?
I think one of the biggest things that I've learned since I was at Carolina, Sean May talks about this all the time. I mean, just human decency and just treating everybody with respect. And really, you don't have to agree with everyone you work with, and you don't really have to particularly like them, like Mr. Lee said, but you have to have a certain type of respect for them and really understand what they say and why they feel that way. I think that we also do a lot of talking during this generation and right now because they feel like it's good and they feel like communication gets things done. But truthfully, we need actions behind those words. And I think that's what we're lacking right now, that we just really need action behind promises that people give us and promises to change things around our communities and our challenges to really better our communities.
Mr. Lee, I'd like to ask this question to both you guys, but I'll start with you. Adam and I are in a different demographic than Garrison is. What is something that you would say to somebody like Adam and me that could be helpful, that could be beneficial, that we could do to help move this process forward where we all want it to be? And Garrison, I want to ask you too, but I'll start with Mr. Lee.
Sure. Well, I think one thing is that there is value in being inquisitive. That is trying to learn more about people and then trying to understand what their experiences have been and then relating that to one's own experience. but also sometimes it's better to just listen and let people talk about themselves, because that way you'll get an indication of what's inside of the individual and can respond in that fashion. But to also engage in areas that make you uncomfortable. For example, I've had friends who've said to me, I just can't get comfortable, for example, going in an environment where I'm the minority and I'm not accustomed to being it, and so it makes me very uncomfortable. Sometimes that to me is a learning experience, because I have certainly benefited personally from being in environments where I was a minority, but then I've been accustomed to that through life. So I think people like you and the two of you can certainly be valuable in simply making oneself available to engage with friends and family, and not be uncomfortable when you're at the dinner table with some of your relatives who may be espousing the kind of language that you know is wrong, and then you not say anything and you sit there and accept it.
Garrison, I know it's not easy to follow Howard Lee when he's answering a question about race relations, but I'll ask the same question to you. What are some positive things that just Adam and I or someone like us could do to help this process?
Yeah, some of the most positive things that have been helpful to me is just understanding, listening to learn rather than listen to respond. I believe that if you just listen and hear our pain and hear what we go through sometimes is really good. And I mean, unfortunately, you really won't be able to feel that, and you'll never really truly be able to understand. But the thing is, you can empathize, really listen, and try to get a better understanding. I think that as a minority, people don't really get a truthful understanding of what it is to be the minority. But I believe that if people really listen and try to empathize and really try to better educate themselves on what's going on in America for us minority people, I think that they'll get a better understanding and be able to really understand about what's going on and how to help us.
Yeah, I want to add one other thing. I think one of the great assets that all of us have is being truthful. Sometimes we find ourselves sugarcoating because we don't want to insult people. We don't want to make them uncomfortable, when we know that their behavior is certainly not the behavior that one should embrace. I'm looking at the protests. I'm very supportive of the protests, and I think it's going to have some important positive impacts going forward. But I am not going to tolerate and not speak out against those people who are destroying and who are looting. That, to me, is breaking the law. And I will not ever support or condone people breaking the law in the name of talking about bringing about change. That's just not. And so sometimes people will say, yeah, but you see, you have to recognize that their experience has been that they've been not a part of the system. So this is the only way they can speak out. That is simply not true. And I think if you let that go and not do something about challenging it, it is the wrong thing to do. I've always challenged, and I will do that.
Garrison, what do you think about that? Because I think hearing those words from Mr. Lee, it's your generation, I think, who's more likely to say, we're frustrated and this is the only way we know how to show it. When you hear Mr. Lee say he's not necessarily on board with that, what do you think?
I mean, me and Mr. Lee can agree to disagree, but some people believe it's right. I mean, I don't think that's, I don't, truthfully, I don't understand. I don't steal. I don't take stuff that's not mine. So I can't understand that. But some people believe like this is the way we can be heard and this is the way our voices will be heard somehow. And like, I believe that you have the right to really show like this is the way you want to be heard. That's fine. This is America. You're supposed to do what you want to do. This is the way people want to be heard. But truthfully, I wouldn't do it. But those people are more than welcome to do it. But I don't particularly agree with it. But they believe that this is where they want to be heard, and they're going to keep going on with it.
I think one thing we have to certainly highlight and keep pounding on is that I can't break the law and then get angry with you when you break the law. That I have to abide by the law, and then I can hold you accountable for it. I really do believe that the law is the greatest strength we have in our society to be able to protect each other. Unfortunately, this law has not been applied equally to Black folk, and still race is the main culprit in our society that engenders bad behavior by certain individual policemen. Not all policemen, just certain individuals. What I get frustrated about is that we put in laws, like we say to policemen, you got to wear a body camera, and then they turn the body camera off, and then we do nothing about that. And that's what bothers me about the leadership today, is that we put in laws, we expect them to protect people, and then we don't enforce the law. And that's part of what's bringing about what we're experiencing today.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that we just, at this time, we really need to hold everyone more accountable for their actions, and really just make it like we have to make an example out of someone just so it could be better for us.
Garrison, I want to turn this forward a little bit. You're returning to campus, you and your teammates here in the coming weeks. What dialogue would you like to have with your teammates, with your classmates, when people are fully returned, or as fully as we can be right now, to Chapel Hill and to Carolina? What kind of dialogue would you like to have with those guys?
So pretty much we had a meeting last night, and I just wanted to tell everyone that your voices are being heard on somebody's platform. Just keep educating yourselves on what's going on, and if you say something, know what you're talking about, and don't be scared. You cannot be scared to voice your opinion, regardless of who doesn't like you for it and who's gonna like you, who's gonna like you more about it. But the thing is, like, we have to keep using our platform, the platform that the people have given us. So we have to use it for a positive manner for once, and not just talk about materialistic things that need to happen for a change for our people. But now the nerve-wracking thing is this. I remember it was a couple years ago where the KKK was standing on Franklin Street around the Silent Sam. I think that's pretty crazy, the fact that those people are allowed to bear arms on campus. I'm going to come peacefully protest and really voice my opinion, use my platform, just show people that I care for Black people and want to receive change. But I think it's very uncomfortable, and I think that should change, that people are allowed on campus to do things like that. And I don't think that's right, because, I mean, truthfully, it could scare people off. It could scare people off to not even want to come to school here, because UNC prides itself on diversity, and we should really look into that. Because, I mean, if I want to come back to campus this summer, start a peaceful protest, and those are things you have to think about. You have to think about the people that's really going to be included in it. You have to think about how it affects everyone else, and also think about the people that could really interrupt this because they don't agree with you.
As both of you are well aware, at Carolina, we're proud of Dean Smith. We're proud of what he did in the 1960s, and we like still talking about it today. What do we need to do today to make sure we're not just saying, hey, remember when Dean Smith did that in the 60s? That was awesome what he did. What can we do in 2020 to take that example and move it forward?
Well, I certainly think that it's important for people who are in position of influence to be willing to use that influence. It's unfortunate, but human behavior tends to seek levels of comfort, and one level of comfort is people are quiet in the face of not challenging wrongdoing. But we as individuals can indeed make a difference, because we can start a movement like Dr. King started. And I think that all of us have an obligation to speak out against wrong and to fight against people who are behaving badly and not be uncomfortable about doing that. That's basically where I see us having to do that. I think it is unfortunate people keep referring to Dean Smith and what he achieved because he could have lost his job, he could have lost his income, but he was willing to put it on the line. What I'm not seeing today are a lot of people who are willing to do that. Dr. King lost his life, and I'm not seeing people who think that it might be worth it to do it. Now, I'm not suggesting people go out and be dumb and be stupid, but I'm also suggesting that you got to stand up and do what is right.
Garrison, kind of to that point, what has Coach Williams talked to you guys about? And this is not the only sensitive topic that has occurred since you've been a player at Carolina. When there are topics like this that come up, what is that dialogue with Coach Williams to you guys?
Coach Williams is always really honest with us, and he's really adamant about how he feels about certain things. I think he supports us as long as we educate ourselves and know what we're talking about, and not just doing it because we're obligated to do it or feel like we should have to do it because people push us in that way. But I feel like he's one of those people that he supports us no matter what. I mean, I know that for a fact because, I spoke out against the Silent Sam protest, and he really agreed with me. He stood by me, and he pretty much helped me go along with it and really educate myself on that.
I want to say that I'm extremely pleased with the actions of several of our coaches in the state. Coach Dorn at State, and Coach Williams at UNC, and Coach Moulton at NCCU, and Coach Brown here at UNC. Those are the ones that come to mind. I'm sure there are others that I've missed. Have stood up and really spoken out very strongly in the face of what we are experiencing today. I think that is admirable, and we have to commend them for doing that because that has not always been the case with coaches being willing to do that. And they know full well when they do it that there will be members of their alumni base that will be strongly in disagreement and will be strongly critical of what they're doing. But I think there comes a time when you have to look in the mirror and ask if I am part of the problem or part of the solution. And I'm proud of what these coaches have done up to this point.
There will come a point at some point in the next weeks or months where this is no longer the number one story that we see every night that we turn on the news. When that occurs, what can Jones do? What can I do to make sure we're still, as Mr. Lee just said, being educated and thinking about this in a way that even though it's not the lead story on the news every night, we're still trying to do something to move it forward?
Go ahead, Garrison.
I actually gonna let you take that one. The right answer for it.
Well, I do think I've always got an answer, Garrison. That's the one thing you don't want to do is let a politician start talking. I've always felt that we tend to go on about our lives once the pressure is off, and that's part of what's been destroying the progress that we think we are making. And it happens with politicians, it happens with general citizens, and people move on with their lives. I think it is important for us to look around and see where there are voids that we need to fill and be willing to do that. I can't have any specifics right now, but I do know that based on what I'm feeling in conversation, and I've been on a lot of video conferences and calls, I'm feeling that there is a different attitude that is developing now that we can build on and move forward. I think it's the coronavirus has forced a lot of pent-up energy in people, and that energy is going to burst out somewhere. Unfortunately, this is how it's bursting out, and it was a spark that started a fire in a dry birth where there was a need for more people. So I think it's important for us to be alert, to be sensitive, and to find, when we find problems, to be able to speak out against those problems. Dialogue to me is one way to do it, but action ultimately is the profound way to make change.
Mr. Lee, Garrison, it really was a pleasure talking to both of you today. We appreciate your time. Know this is not necessarily an easy topic to talk about, and appreciate you guys committing some time and your opinions on this matter. Really great to see you both, and hope you're both safe and healthy and doing well, and look forward to seeing you both soon.
Yes.
Thanks for the opportunity.
So again, we appreciate Garrison Brooks and Howard Lee joining us here on Carolina Insider Live. And Adam, an important discussion to have, and great points of view from both those gentlemen.
I think it was nice just to have those two together and have them be able to interact. That was the best part by far. As usual, Jones, it was best when you and I weren't talking.
That's the key.
But when Garrison Brooks and Howard Lee are talking to each other, that's something I want to hear, and that's something I want to learn from. And hopefully folks got a little something out of that.
All right, let's get to our BMW Social Drive, brought to you by North Carolina BMW dealers, providing legendary performance, exceptional offers, and a premium ownership experience. Test drive the ultimate driving machine today. Adam, we start with a tweet from the head coach of Carolina football, Mack Brown. And Coach Brown, as many coaches have, speaking out on this social issue that's been so prevalent here over the last week or so. You see reaction from both a former Tar Heel in Octavius Barnes and a current Tar Heel in Patrice Renee. And I think that maybe the most important part of seeing all this, Adam, is that there is a very open dialogue going on within Tar Heel football.
I think what makes Mack Brown a great football coach and a great recruiter is also what's so valuable as a person right now, which is that he listens. You saw that in the tweet from Patrice Renee. He appreciates Coach Brown's willing to listen to him. There's been a little too much talk in the last day or so of who's winning and who's losing this discussion. Nobody is, except the people who are listening. And it seems like so far Coach Brown doing a great job, as you would expect if you've ever had the chance to speak with him, doing a great job of listening to everybody involved and trying to learn a little something.
All right, let's go to a football topic on the field, Adam, and go ahead and lock it in stone here in early June. The Sporting News putting out its bowl predictions for this season, and that looks pretty good. Tar Heels in the Capital One Orange Bowl on January 2nd against Penn State.
June 4th bowl predictions are always absolutely guaranteed. So this means you can book your reservations for the Orange Bowl, then you'll leave there and you'll go to the College Football Playoff to watch the Tar Heels participate in that as well. But I think it just speaks to the buzz around Carolina football right now. People are talking about the Tar Heels on the field, and that's something that we've been desperate for so long, and it's nice to be sitting here in June already excited about Carolina football.
Carolina football players begin a staggered return to Chapel Hill here in just a couple of weeks, so looking forward to seeing those guys back on campus. Lee Pace has covered Carolina football for just about ever, Adam, but Lee sent out a tweet regarding men's basketball that we're going to highlight here today.
Lee Pace, like myself, an accomplished golfer, so he is in tune with everything that happens at Pinehurst. I thought this was an amazing tweet. There are 8 Hall of Famers in this picture. Just 8 Hall of Famers just hanging around. You've got the greatest player to ever play, Michael Jordan, with the logo, Jerry West. They're both just there. When Dean Smith got his friends together, this is who came. The 8 Hall of Famers, Larry Brown, Billy Cunningham, Michael Jordan, Dean Smith, Julius Erving, Jerry West, Chuck Daly, Dave Gavitt, all in the Hall of Fame, all just hanging out at Pinehurst. This is something that Roy Williams still continues today, tries to get coaches from the Carolina family and perhaps maybe one layer removed together, talk about basketball, play some golf if they have time, and hopefully, if not this summer, maybe they'll be able to do that next summer.
I mean, one part of that picture had Michael Jordan, Dean Smith, and Dr. J right next to each other. That's pretty good. Speaking of basketball, Adam, for the basketball Tar Heels, Armando Bacot figures to play a big role for Carolina this upcoming season. Armando, just like everybody else, unable to go through perhaps the normal summer workouts that he would, but that doesn't mean he isn't working out, and in fact, he was able to find another Tar Heel that helped him. Yeah,
and it's so nice to see the Tar Heels current and former players working together in the summer when they're not able to do so here at the Smith Center. We appreciate @JB Made This for finding this video for us. But this is the kind of work that Armando would be doing at the Smith Center in a normal year. People forget how good Ed Davis is. He's been in the NBA for a decade at this point and still going strong. This is a big summer for Armando Bacot because it feels like he's a little bit of the forgotten big man in what has become a very crowded post area for Tar Heel basketball. But remember, Jones, Dean Smith always said, biggest improvement for a college player between freshman and sophomore year, and that's the jump that Armando Bacot is trying to make as he works out with Ed Davis up in Richmond.
At JB made that, not at JB made this.
He made, right? You can deal with this or you can deal with that.
Ed Davis, yeah, just a terrific teammate as well. Everybody who's played with him, both here at Carolina and in the league, just nothing but positive things to say about Ed Davis. Last two things, Adam, both pieces of coaching news around Carolina athletics. Let's start with women's basketball. Tim Taylor, an assistant coach for the Lady Tar Heels, moved on to become the head coach at Navy. So Courtney Banghart had an opening and has filled it.
Adrian Walters, the new Carolina women's basketball assistant coach, really good experience here, especially in the South, some experience at Auburn and at Alabama. Strong defensive coach. Really excited about being part of the Carolina brand and getting Carolina women's basketball back where it needs to be. Was an encouraging first year in Courtney Banghart's first year at Carolina. Of course, everybody who listens or watches the pod knows we are big Courtney Banghart fans and looking forward to Coach Walters being part of that program going much bigger and better places.
Coach Walters has actually seen the Tar Heels on the other bench here the last few years, both with Auburn and Alabama, so at least a little bit familiar with the current group of Heels. Adam, last thing, after nearly 40 years, Carolina's gymnastics coach Derek Galvin stepping aside, announcing his retirement. Coach Galvin, not just an extraordinarily accomplished coach, and you can see some of those numbers on your screen now, but just one of the most well-liked and well-respected people around Carolina athletics.
This is the kind of person who makes your athletic department better. Not just a highly skilled coach, but a person who people want to be around. He's been around Carolina as a student athlete or as a coach for almost 50 years, so he understands what Carolina is about. He's able to convey that to newcomers to the athletic department and, of course, also his student athletes. And Jones, you've gotten a chance to be around him in a little more personal way and observe him firsthand.
Yeah, my daughter is a young gymnast and has gone to Coach Galvin's camp, and he is always so kind, so willing to listen, to help her, just a terrific teacher on top of everything else. So I think selfishly, we're all sad to see Derek Galvin announce that retirement, but certainly wish nothing but the best for him as he moves forward. Adam, we made it through week 3, maybe.
3 down and somewhere between 1 and 1 million to go.
We appreciate you being with us. We'll see you next week on the next edition of Carolina Insider Live.